Let me go, I'm gonna go fix that, agenda, okay? Just in case everybody else is trying to get on, but we can start the meeting though, okay? You're good, Peggy?
Yes,
Okay,
Good.
have you already pressed record?
I did. I pressed record. We're recording.
All right, so then Scott, you can start, I'll fix that right now.
Okay, good afternoon. It looks like we have quorum. We've pushed the record button. Looks like Jay combed his hair. I think everything's looking good. Oh, now he uncombed it. It looks good, Jay, whatever you do. So I want to welcome everybody. What's that?
I said, no, just getting going. No, not really.
Okay,
Put my hat on.
Be nice to him or else he's gonna shut us off and then we won't have a quorum.
that's right.
No, I wouldn't do that.
He wouldn't shut us off till at least October 1st.
Till the gates are closed.
Right.
September 28th.
He gave us a good amount of water this year, though. Thank you, Jay.
No, thank you all.
1,300.
So, would like to welcome everybody. We do have a quorum, as Peggy told us. And Annette is working on the link to get perhaps anyone else that wants to join. And so let me just have everybody say hello. Start off, I'm looking on my screen. I see Albert. Why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. That's literal. Thank you. John. John Albright.
Yeah, this is John Albright with Freeze and Nichols on the consulting team.
Thank you. Teresa.
Hi, Teresa Todd. I live in Jeff Davis County, represent counties.
Thank you, Teresa. Peggy.
Peggy O'Brien, Local Governments Manager, Rio Grande Council of Governments.
And Marfa, right? Okay.
Yes.
Dan Dunlap.
Howdy. I'm at Marfa.
Okay. He's in Marfa and he has to leave at 1:30. Okay.
3 o'clock.
And Jay?
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Jay at the Irrigation District here in El Paso. Good afternoon.
Okay. And I see Jennifer.
Yep, Jennifer Jackson, technical consultant with Carrillo Engineers.
And next I see Gerald Grijalva.
Gerald Mihalva, the Lower Valley Water District.
Okay. Then I see part of Becky Brewster because of my screen, but there's Becky. I heard you have a suntan that they
A
can't
little
see.
bit. At least I didn't get burned. Becky Brewster,
Yes.
I represent municipalities and I'm in Van Horn.
Okay. Then we have the folks here.
We have 7 more.
Oh, 7 more. Okay. I can't see any way to see the others.
There's Michael Flores. Michael Flores
Okay.
joined.
Yeah, so
Texas Water Development Board.
thank you. Next. Oh, there he is.
Peggy, you just want to call folks off that we can't see?
Oh, sure. Sarah?
Good afternoon, Sarah Lee with the Water Development Board, just listening today to your meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. I
And
can't see
Roberto
anymore.
said hi, yes? Roberto, did you say hi already? Sorry.
Good, Teresa. on
No,
there. She had
Roberto
said hello yet. You do.
El Paso County Economic Development Department.
There's Roberto. Okay,
And Teresa?
Teresa. And we got all the monitor covered, right? So then, when we start here.
Teresa, say something already?
Yeah, she did.
Oh, okay.
And
Good
Raquel
afternoon.
Ansures is trying to get on. She's been bouncing on and off, so she should be joining us hopefully.
Okay, so Raquel Ansures from El Paso Electric is here, kind of, until she gets a better connection. Okay,
Great. Good afternoon. John Kennedy with the Presidio Municipal Development District in the city of Presidio. And just want to say it's really nice to be with y'all. I've got a lot of technical planning background and I can tell y'all like to follow the rules and we can geek out about planning. So that's great.
well, thank you, John. And we're in our Dave section now. Go ahead.
Dave Hall, just a representative of the public on the committee.
Yeah, I'm David Etzold, representing real estate.
And I'm Scott Reinert. And
Heather Rose with the Texas Water Development Board.
And Sean Woodard with Marathon Petroleum.
thank you, Sean. Has everyone introduced himself to today's meeting?
Raquel just joined. Raquel, would you like to say hi?
Oh, she's, okay. All right, well, we know that she's there, kind of. All right, okay. And so I think we're ready for item 2. Do we have anybody who wants to make a public comment? Okay. All right, hearing none, we'll go to item 3, recognition of guests and designated alternates. Sounds like we kind of went through everybody. So I think we're almost ready for item 4. Review and approve the minutes from the, is this the general meeting?
23 July.
Oh, this is the, yeah. Okay.
Scott, this is
Yes.
Albert. I went through my 2 pages are superimposed on the attachment and I can't read it very well, but I don't find my name on that list of attendees at that. And I was there in person with you and Dave, and there weren't but the 3 of us, I don't think.
You were, Albert.
Yeah, we've
I could
got,
you're
And
there.
Dave,
You're there.
you're marked
am I on there?
physically
Well,
present.
as I say, the pages are superimposed and I can't read them very well. So
Yeah, it
I
shows you
very
physically
easily could have
present,
missed
Albert. It does show you physically present.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed? And the motion passes. Okay. Okay, so now we're on item 5. Okay. Yes.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, so we're on item 5. Discussion and consider action regarding all nominations related to Far West Texas Regional Water Planning Group vacancies for voting members.
We have a recommendation to the general membership to accept Thomas Black as a rural economic development nomination. And the board is making that, the executive committee is making that recommendation.
Mr. Black isn't here today. You want to give him a little background on him, or?
He's a native of Isleta.
I think so. Yeah, it's one of your problems.
Okay. He's an alderman of the city of San Elizario. Lives in the lower valley of El Paso, has a passion for water supply projects. He's a local rancher, mother a banker. He's alderman number 5. Recently reelected to a 2nd term. Staunch advocate for community development, a vision of inclusive progress. He's committed to the community. That's a couple of excerpts from his resume.
I second the motion you made.
Okay.
Do we need to make sure that he starts for next meeting, or do we have enough for a quorum with putting him on?
It would be suggested to make him official for next meeting. Do you want to make that amendment? Do you want to make that addition, Dave?
Yes, I'll amend my motion.
Okay.
Well, you're going to amend.
I'll amend my second.
I'll amend the motion,
I'm sorry.
then you can amend the
She was
second.
asking you. Wrong Dave.
Yes.
Okay, so we have an amended motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, motion passes.
Do you want to talk about your visit with the young man that?
Oh, yes. So last meeting, we had great interest from a young man named Daniel Bueno from Benton. And he was going to serve on as economic, one of those positions. And he had been, I'd met him before, and he has lots of interest in state water planning, and he was unable to be part of this meeting. And so I'm going to reach out to him and have him continue with our journey through our state water plan. But I do think he has an interest in this process. So I think that's what we talked about earlier in our executive meeting this morning. But he's somebody I think we should continue reaching out to. That's Daniel Bueno from Benton.
And at this point, there's no vacant position to put him in, but we have an intent to make additional voting positions to accommodate membership if he chooses.
Yes. Okay, I think we're ready for item 6. Consideration and discussion of material.
So that is the.
Oh.
I'm so sorry,
executive
Scott,
meeting.
I didn't give you the,
That's
I didn't give you my apologies. I did not provide you with the general meeting
Yes.
agenda, so you want to just read from
Oh,
the screen?
yes. Okay,
Number
sure.
6. Sorry about that.
Alright. Okay,
Item 6 changes a little bit.
all right.
I
Okay.
apologize.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we're on item 6, Texas Water Development Board general updates by Heather, and she's next to me, and she said, don't skip me. So I skipped her, but no longer. So go ahead, Heather.
All right, so a couple updates from the Texas Water Development Board.
Heather, if I may ask, you do have a PowerPoint?
Yeah, I have slides. You can also, if you click on that general.
I'll go
you can
ahead
pull
and
up
do that.
the PDF slides, that works too. And I'll just say next slide. Yeah, next.
Okay.
So just a highlight on where we are in the planning cycle. We are sprinting towards the end, and the next big deadlines are your initially prepared plan is due on March 3rd of 2025, and then the regional water plan is due on October 20th, 2025. So it'll be here before we know it. Next slide, please. The biggest update from us is the first ever state flood plan was adopted, and highly recommend y'all check that out. Big thanks to Dave over here, Dave Hall, for being on the El Paso region, flood region, for helped with all of the flood efforts in this area. These are hyperlinked if you download those meeting materials, and it should take you right to the flood plan page, and then you can check out the interactive state flood plan. Next slide, please.
Scott played on that too.
Oh, thank you too, Scott. I did not know.
He's also the chair.
No, not Scott.
No.
Omar was.
Oh, that's right. Omar was. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Scott was. on it,
Yes,
Omar.
I'm aware of it, but
You want to give him more work, I'm sure.
so,
though. Yeah, that's right.
so why don't somebody from the flood planning group just briefly describe what it is and what kind of projects
Go
and
back to the flood slide.
Oh, well, that'd be quite a challenge for me.
uh,
I'm not sure. Jennifer, can you help with that?
Oh, no, Jennifer's.
Oh, that's AECom.
No, just, I mean, state flood plan.
Do it for me, yeah.
We had, our region for the Region 14 was a much larger region than what we're accustomed to with water planning. I believe that we have 14 counties. We go as far east as Sutton County. And so, and then we cover a little bit of Del Rio, Val Verde. And so this flood plan took it was an accelerated pace to get to the actual regional plan for Upper Rio Grande Flood Planning Group. But I think that we're ready and we're geared for our second cycle, which is going to start very soon.
Yeah.
So it's going to be following the same steps, similar steps to water planning. What's most important is that they have an opportunity to apply for the flood infrastructure fund. And so just like water planning, it's important for the communities to be involved and identify areas that need mitigation for flooding. So that way it's included in the plan and they have steps in terms of how to alleviate that.
Yeah. Thanks. Great summary.
well, thank you.
Yeah. Now, Omar, if you're online, thank you for your efforts too.
Yes, yes.
All right, moving on to a new resource coming for regional water planning, or that has already been sent out to your consultant. Can you go to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
So we have the WUD list and local plan information provided. Oh no, if you go back to the PDF.
Give me I clicked on there, didn't I? Okay, let me go back. Actually clicked on the link is what you're telling me.
Okay. If you click on the link, that's where it goes.
Okay, sorry about that. And then I will now go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Focus.
So during the projections revisions process, we had received supporting documentation to adjust those population demands for not just your region, but for all the regions. And we've compiled these all into a spreadsheet and provided them to your consultants. And we thought this would be an interesting or helpful to share with y'all to give you an idea of where to focus on WUGs that did not submit any supporting material as kind of a focal point for rural outreach. Note that just because they didn't submit a local plan doesn't mean they don't have one. They just didn't submit one to us. And this is just for your consideration, and it's meant to help with outreach efforts. So focusing, help you focus on folks we haven't heard from. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So y'all may remember Proposition 6 that passed last November. The Texas Water Development Board was charged with these funds and with implementing a plan on how to spend the $1 million that was given to us by the legislature. Step one was seeking stakeholder feedback. So we had 3 surveys that were sent out. Highlights from that feedback are folks who are concerned about addressing average median household income, rural designation, and household cost factor were some of the top factors to be considered when distributing funds. All of the information and feedback you can check out at that link that for the board item. It has all the breakdown of all the feedback we received from the 3 surveys and also the 60 email responses when we were open for public comment on this. So then the next step was actually breaking down the funding, and this is a plan, so it's subject to change, but we just wanted to show you what our plan is so far. And if you want to receive any future updates on this, you can sign up at that email list at the bottom link. Next slide, please. Here's the breakdown of the funding. And again, this is subject to change. This is the first iteration plan, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing it. So the Rural Water Assistance Fund in total is going to be receiving $195 million. 45 million of that is for 100% grant for conservation water loss projects for very small communities under 1,000 people. And then 130 million will be for a 90% grant, 10% loan or local match for conservation and water loss projects from the SRF solicitation for 1 to 10,000 populations. And then the high risk or need projects with 100% grants will receive $20 million. And then for the Water Loan Assistance Fund, 70% grant and 30% loan or local match will be for conservation and water loss projects for 2025 state revolving fund solicitation. And those would be for those kind of larger populations of 10,000 to 150,000. We'll receive $90 million. SWIFT program will be receiving $300 million. The new Water Supply Fund of Texas, which is in statute designated to receive a quarter of the funds, and those new water supplies are desalination of brackish water, desalination of seawater, desalination of produced water, and interstate transfers will be receiving the $250 million. And then potential bond leverage funding through existing financial assistance programs will receive $150 million. And then finally, the statewide water public awareness program will be receiving $15 million. And the breakdown in more detail of all these funds can also be found in that board item that was hyperlinked to the last slide. And next slide, please. And finally, the implementation plan timeline. So this summer, the board had recently adopted the rules for the Rural Water Assistance Fund. And also they were considering the Water Loan Assistance Fund rule proposal. But in the fall, The board will be considering adoption of these water loan assistance fund rules and the new water supply for Texas Fund rule proposal and statewide water public awareness campaign contract. And invitations to apply will be sent to the Water Loan Assistance Fund, Water Conservation, Water Loss Projects. Then this winter, the board will be considering the Rural Water Assistance Fund high-risk project commitments, and the board will be considering the adoption of the new water supply Texas Fund rules. And the next spring, the board will be considering the Water Loan Assistance Fund commitments. Next slide. Oh, do you have a question?
I do, and Scott might be able to answer this, or maybe Jay or Nellis. The big lawsuit that's in process, federal lawsuit with Texas and New Mexico, and I guess Colorado's involved in that too, or not? Regarding the Rio Grande.
Oh, Jay can answer to that.
Is there going to be the possibility that El Paso will receive more water as a result of that suit out of settlement? And if so, would that qualify as new water supply? Because it is actually being created
From a different state.
from a different state.
That is a question for our legal team, but I can get back to you on that. Jay?
I'll speak real quick to that. So there is no settlement decree.
No, I know there's no settlement yet. I was just saying, if there is a settlement that increases our water supply, does that fall under the new water supply rules, Jay?
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you were referring to the settlement decree that was proposed, that the Supreme Court, did not accept. I don't know, as far as if it falls under this new, well, we haven't, if there is additional water, I would assume yes, but I mean, we've not come to any agreement that says there's more water or less water or any of that. So we're getting all ramped up and started again on that particular case. So it's still.
I'm just thinking that Corolla or some of our successors 2 decades from now, when this gets settled, might want to be able to put that under that category of new water supply.
If it's from out of state, possibly, but I definitely would need to check with, I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but we are in the process of developing.
I personally think it would be, like Jay said, pending the resolution of this, which they haven't resolved anything.
No, of course it would be pending the resolution.
Well, then we would determine if there is in fact more flowing water, and it would change our drought of record conditions, at least for El Paso. And that might ultimately trickle down to our state water planning, how much water is available.
Right, and this new water supply fund is $250 million. They could be used for treatment or other
But
purposes.
since they've already taken 20 years to get to a stalemate, I don't think there's going to be any kind of pending, right, Jay? I don't think it's going to
So I
resolve
guess we'll
itself.
know when we get there, but as of now, the water supply and operating is current under the existing operating agreement, so. That's where we're
We're
at.
supposed to make a ruling on it.
Teresa, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Well, I think there was.
Well, it was 25 years ago, so no, never mind.
Okay. And then folks, we can't see everyone online, so if you have a question, you can click your raise your hand button in Teams and it'll pop up for us and we'll be able to see that you have a question. And my last slide is just questions. Yeah. You have a question?
Do we know, or can we discuss any funding that's been awarded within our region?
Yeah, I think that.
And I know that some has.
Yeah.
It might be interesting for everybody to know where it's been awarded or who got it.
Does Jennifer, do you have a slide on that? Or isn't that in the plan?
I do not have a slide on it because it doesn't really pertain to the chapters that we're reviewing, but I do have the Excel sheet from the Water Development Board that shows which active projects are currently funding or being funded for Region E. Looked at it the
It's
other
nice
day.
to
So
see products.
yeah.
And I did want to comment while Jennifer's pulling that up. We're going to be having a financial workshop after this. Enriqueta Caballero is joining us virtually after we adjourn. if you'd like to learn more about our financial programs. So encourage y'all to tune into that if you'd like.
So
Is that slide available, Jennifer?
So on the
You
fly,
can let the,
trying to figure out
Sorry.
where I've saved it. I'll share what I have been able to pull up, but
Yes.
I think I've got something that's a little more.
That looks like it, yeah.
Yeah. So for Region E, and it may be pretty small because this is just me showing you an Excel sheet, but you can see the entity, the committed funds, the last committed date, and the project status. These are all of our active projects inside the region that have received some sort of funding from the Water Development Board. So we've got several projects for Del City. We have one for the town of Anthony. We've got something in El Paso County, a couple of those, El Paso Water, Horizon Regional Mud, Lower Valley Water District, Marfa, Presidio County, Studi Butte, and Benton.
What did Marfa get in Presidio? Let's talk about those small
Yeah,
outliers.
so it looked like Marfa received $705,000 in funds for, it says the city of Marfa currently operates 2 water wells which supply the demand for the entire city. One of the wells has been in operation for 80 years and the pump is lodged in the casing. Attempts to repair or replace the pump have been unsuccessful. So while the aquifer has plenty of water for the city, the loss of this well will hinder the city's ability to serve the domestic water demand. This project would drill and equip a new well to replace the existing well that has reached the end of its projected useful life. And you asked about Presidio. Well, I've got 3 for Presidio County.
The most recent, the $12 million one is the most recent one that they just received from, and I believe Marfa's on there also.
Okay, so this project will provide wastewater services to areas in the county who do not have centralized wastewater service.
Yeah.
Clean water.
Yeah, this is the outlying areas, the Cologne, Redford and Candelaria.
They're going to bring a trunk line of sewer lines in from those residential areas, and do the residents have to tap into a sewer line that the municipality is going to bring to them, or?
It's going to be an independent system at each site. I'm not positive. Yeah, because they're all 10, 20 miles outside of Presidio.
Yeah.
At least. So I think Trey and Deirdre are working on that. I look forward to getting up to speed on the design, and so I'll be able to interface on all that. But they're putting together those groups, basically, new boards and everything with the community citizens.
Well, this is where the rubber meets the road for our work, because, and it's a good question, Dave, that you asked, because we sit here talking about all this stuff, but we never see what comes of it.
You see a product.
Yeah, so this is great.
Yeah, so what I end up doing with this Excel sheet is I incorporate it into our Chapter 5. So when we're going into Chapter 5 and we're updating our water management strategies, this is a great way to kind of start that work, because you're using information that's super current on communities and entities that are in the middle of a project because they have received funding. And this helps me to update details and write-ups around what entities are doing. So yeah, I'm glad someone brought it up and I was able to quickly find it.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It'll take me several minutes to pull it up. Okay, any other questions?
We have some grants from Texas Water Development Board currently. We just finished the shotcrete on a Franklin feeder. It was a mile, and that was the percentage was like an 85-15. But yeah, we finished that up this year in March, and they came down and shot a video. It was very successful. It was a great project. We just finished that up, and we've got another one in the Franklin Canal. So we do have some ongoing grants currently funded by Texas Water Development Board. So thank you.
Yeah, and then you can learn more about more funding opportunities after this meeting. We'll turn into our financial workshop. Thanks, y'all. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Heather. We're on to item 7, and that is report from Carollo on the schedule of regional water planning. That looks like Jennifer. Go ahead. Thank you.
It is. Thank you. Give me just a second to get my screens back in order and I will share the PowerPoint presentation. Let me know when you can see it.
We can see it.
It's there.
Okay. Awesome.
Jennifer, if I can, can I go ahead and run the screen for you? Because when you do that, we can't see all the people. So it's with our second screen. So if this is the presentation that you have, that you provided to Peggy, I can run it for you.
Yeah, normally it would be, but this morning I added 2 more slides.
Okay, well then we'll work with that then. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. That's okay.
I thought it, okay.
They'll pop up.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm monitoring it on this side too.
Sorry, normally I don't do that, but there was content I thought I could summarize in a graph. So I added some content. Okay, so regional water planning schedule, just to kind of remind everybody, because it's going to get intense between now and the March 3rd deadline, just what we did in our previous meeting. So in our last meeting, I've provided the draft chapter 1 and the draft chapter 2, and I let it go out for any kind of feedback, redline revisions, conversation, hopefully wrapped up by the end of August. I think I said the 30th of August. If information is still trickling in, that is fine, but I needed kind of the bulk of the edits to be complete. And so during this meeting, we're going to just discuss any of the updates that I got to the draft chapter 1 and or draft chapter 2, just trying to keep the planning group members apprised on what's been changing, what new enhancements have come in, who's responded to some of the emails. And then I'm going to do high-level summary between myself and Frieza Nichols, our draft chapters 3 and 4, and then we'll repeat the process. The feedback for 3 and 4 will go out for about 3 weeks. I will need probably by the first week, end of the first week of October, all the feedback to be in my inbox for those 2 chapters so I can incorporate them and get us to a final state. And then we'll just kind of talk about what are some other regional planning efforts. Heather showed a better slide because it was kind of honed in on the last few months of the year that we've got left and what we're focusing on, but this is our typical slide with the red circle just kind of highlighting where we're at in our schedule, and we are marching quickly towards our March 3rd deadline. So, Mr. Reinert, that is all I have for that agenda item.
Okay. So it looks like we're on to item 8, consideration and discussion of material from Carollo regarding updates to the draft chapter 1 for the 2026 Region E water plan.
Okay, so this slide should be somewhat familiar. I showed it at the last meeting. The red boxes are indicating where we've gotten some feedback and some new content. So I'm just going to focus on the updates to those sections. To start us off, we have a geographic setting of the region section within Chapter 1, where we talk about population and regional economy, and then we break it out into 5 sub-bullets. Inside this agricultural resources section, Mr. Ornelas did provide some new content that was more reflective of the data that we have to date. And so you can see the snippet is showing you the new content that came in off of some email correspondences there and a new write-up that the irrigation district provided, and then a strike through to some of the old content. So I'm very excited and just am happy to be able to present, you know, that your regional water plan is evolving and improving as we continue to march through each of the planning cycles. Water loss audit, this entire section was not covered in the previous meeting because I was still working with the Water Development Board and the water loss audit team there and pulling together our data. So I thought it would be good to come back around and kind of give you some insight into what this new water loss audit section will have. The Water Development Board is required to evaluate water loss of retail public utilities that request financial assistance for a water supply project using water loss thresholds as an indicator of whether a utility must include funds for mitigating this water loss as part of that request for financial assistance. So this is just high level. Why do the planning groups have to include a section on water loss? Well, because the rules say that planning groups must then consider these strategies to address these issues that are identified in this water loss audit information. One thing to note here is that there have to be some like thresholds, some benchmarks that we need to use to determine which entities are, perhaps losing water through their system. And historically, we have used 10% as our cutoff for water loss, and then anything greater than 10%, we would develop a water management strategy to account for that loss. And we called that water loss and mainline repair in our previous plan. But the methodology that we have typically used in past plans did change. And the reason for that is we've always kind of aligned ourselves with the American Water Works Association, AWWA, and they have gone through some industry standards that have changed. So they've had some changes with their industry standards. Before anybody panics, I do like kind of where they're headed. So where in the past it was kind of a one size fits all target, 10%, and it didn't really account for the uniqueness of each entity or utility or where you're at in the state. It was just kind of this arbitrarily cutoff. They have decided that they would prefer to look at water loss through the lens of some water loss key performance indicators. And so I'll talk through what those new indicators are, and then I've ran the analysis for our region to develop our preliminary table of if we follow these key performance indicators, which entities in our region are then losing a little bit more water in their system. So those new indicators are kind of defined into two distinct groups. The first group is a retail public utility that's located in a less dense community. And when they say less dense, they're looking at those communities that have less than 32 connections per mile. That's part A. Part B is then that they have this threshold or median of water loss is 57 gallons per connection per day. So if you are less than 32 connections per mile, the threshold is really no more than 57 gallons per connection per day to be lost. They also look at utilities that are in a more dense community. So we're talking about 32 or more connections. And if it's your utility that sits in that denser community, then your threshold or median for kind of drawing that line in the sand is no more than 30 gallons per connection per day. So that kind of became the measuring stick, so to speak. Instead of our 10%, you can tell it's a little more detailed. We're looking at some, granular data. And so this is just, one, it's our table 1.9 in its draft form. If the planning group chooses to kind of follow this AWWA methodology. And I've highlighted for the purpose of just kind of demonstrating what these new water loss indicators are. The City of Alpine in 2018 submitted a report. They are less than 32 connections, and their cutoff would have been 57, but you can see that they're slightly over at almost 65, 64.89. So according to these two determining factors, the City of Alpine in 2018 was losing a little bit more water in their system, and so they've made it onto this table, and so on and so forth. So you can see which entities in our region by which year that report was showing a little bit more of a loss than those two indicators. And we were discussing this in our executive committee meeting, and so I think Scott can kind of speak to where we landed and what we're going to consider before we finalize this. So Scott, I'll let you kind of fill the group in.
Okay, so I know water loss in El Paso water is very important. At a funding level, at a state level, national level, if you exceed this 10% threshold, you are said to be not efficient with your system, and you need to fix your system before you get more funding assistance on projects. So it's certainly gotten El Paso Water's attention. We have been very aggressively pursuing water loss, and we had a good discussion earlier. Is it actual loss of pipelines that are breaking and having leaks, which happens all the time in El Paso with a main break and you get a washout and you got to fix it and it's in the street? Or it could be an apparent loss, which could be from flow meters at point A and point B. They don't measure the exact same amount of water. That could be tabulated as a water loss. So El Paso Water takes water loss very seriously. What I suggested earlier is that I need to circle back with my people on the water loss campaign and see what how they're pursuing it. And we thought that we could have a little section on El Paso's efforts to rein in the lost water. And then not sure which methodology El Paso Water is following, but I know that they're very active in trying to control it.
Highlighting the flow meter aspect of your investigation, because that's a new sort of way of approaching water loss.
So one of these flow meters are getting more and more accurate, and if you have old flow meters, that if you can think of a propeller flow meter that's not really electronic, Jay's nodding his head, and then if you have these modern flow meters that are expensive and very high degree of accuracy, low percent of error. You're trying to get these to communicate and report the same water flowing in and out of a pipe. You may have discrepancies, and that can be reported as water loss. But we're, very interested and active in trying to control this, because it could signify that we're not efficient with our system, and that's why the regulators want us to pay attention to this.
That's real interesting, and seeing that most of it's falling under the unreported loss in the urban and rural. And I'd imagine on the rural side, there's a lot of need for system modernization. There's a lot of leaking and patchwork to look into as well.
Order a new set of flow valves.
Yeah,
or
that
flow
sounds like a good
meters.
start.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of leaking as well.
Yeah.
So I think we can follow up with Jennifer and see how we can make this a better section for our report. And at the end of the day, I think we're all trying to make this report a valuable resource, so that when you have a question at your job, or you may ask and say, hey, let's go to the state water plan, and we can find answers. So I think that's something good that we're doing in this effort.
Yep, to piggyback on that, two things I'd like to point out, which I mentioned also during the executive committee meeting. When this table was generated, at the end of the day, I compared it to the table in our previous plan. And what I noticed is we're picking up most of the entities that we've captured in our previous plan. So that kind of told me that the new method that AWWA is setting out as their industrial standard is still accurate, if not a little bit more accurate, and it's capturing our 10% loss that we had developed a table for in our previous plan. That's part one. Part two is there were a couple of entities that fell off. And when I dug a little deeper, as we're starting our water management strategy effort to kind of go back and revisit all of our feasible strategies, have conversations with each of the sponsors. Are these strategies still valid? Are you, needing us to add new strategies to your list, take strategies away? In those conversations, a few of the entities are actively pursuing the water loss audit and mainline repair strategy that we represented in our plan during the previous cycle. And so because they've made some good effort in repairing those leaks and fixing those breaks, they didn't appear on this list. So it gave me great confidence in knowing that this is a good starting point, because it is capturing entities that are still losing water, which is true to our last plan, but it's also showing the entities that have made some big efforts in repairing some of those losses. They didn't, their data for the past 6 years reflected the positive change that they're making there.
Hey, Jennifer, can a water supply company have a project of mitigating water loss as a water strategy?
Absolutely. We had, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but at least a dozen or more in our plan in the previous cycle. And it is a water management strategy. It kind of falls under our conservation category, and it is titled Water Loss Audit and Mainline Repair. And in conversations with those entities, we detailed, how many miles of pipe they're looking at repairing, how much loss is happening, and then this strategy intends to correct X amount of miles, saving them X amount of acre feet a year. So it's definitely a water management strategy, and it brings in new water that otherwise would be lost through the system.
Okay.
Okay. So if we move past our water loss audit section that has been written up and is in draft form, and I'll get that information out to Scott so he can kind of compare it to what his conservation team is doing. I'll wait for feedback there. But in the meantime, we also made, with the help of El Paso Water, Scott and Lisa, we had hoped to update this table, table 1-12, but unfortunately we weren't getting any feedback from the individuals that helped us create it maybe 2 cycles ago, possibly 3. So we came up with a new sentence that just high level said, based on these production trends, CDAD Juarez pumps approximately 150,000 acre feet per year from the Hueco Bolson, and I'm not sure I'll be able to pronounce the name of the other aquifer, but we're going to leave our existing table in with some new language around it, and then we'll attempt to maybe add onto it during the next planning cycle. Okay, those are the updates that I have for Chapter 1. So my game plan is to fine tune some of the comments that came out of the executive committee meeting today, make sure the formatting is correct in our Chapter 1, and then accept all the red lines and come up with a final Chapter 1 for the planning group members to approve at our next meeting. So it is coming to a close.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We're ready for item number 9, consideration and discussion of material from Carollo regarding updates to the draft Chapter 2 for the 2026 Region E Water Plan.
Okay, so maybe new information to some and certainly not to others. It was a point of discussion earlier today during the executive committee meeting. Chapter 2 first did not receive any feedback other than Dave, which I think I understand why I didn't get the email, but he was kind enough during that meeting to convey what small changes need to be made to a couple figures in Chapter 2 for clarity reasons. So I will do that. But outside of that, I didn't receive any major redline revisions or recommended changes to Chapter 2. What we are waiting on is the group did decide to kind of contract with UTEP to extend a study around population projections, because there was a lot of concern that the data that we were asked to use with the Water Development Board and even some of our revisions that did get approved, that it still wasn't accurately reflecting the growth occurring in our counties in Region E. This study was supposed to be finalized end of August. We're still waiting for results. And so based on what those results are, the executive committee and I will kind of talk through if it finds a way into Chapter 2 where we've got a section where we write up content about the findings of those studies Does that population projection across the planning horizon look very different than what data we've got right now? Is it significant enough to warrant its own section in Chapter 2? And then there's, of course, some downstream impacts in the plan where we'd also have to account for this additional data set. Or is it not significant enough? And so just more to come with that. So as we get further along in my PowerPoint presentation, as we wrap up, I have a slide that talks about the meeting cadence and what material are we going to cover at each meeting in order to stay on track. And you'll see that I've moved Chapter 2 towards the end of our meeting cadence, just so that we can give time for myself and others to consider what comes out of that UTEP study. Scott, Dave's, is there anything else that you want to add that we covered in our executive committee meeting?
I think we kind of touched on the timing or expectation of getting something from UTEP in a draft format that Jennifer can work with. And our goal was by the end of September, have some draft numbers. We have been told that Fort Bliss and what was the other town?
Terrell County.
Terrell County had some reservations, or they weren't finished yet, but the rest of it seemed like most of the population study from UTEP is done, which we've been calling UTEP, but no answer so far. But hopefully we'll get some numbers, and it'd be nice to be able to see those numbers and see if they're meaningful changes, and then we would follow up as a group as what to do with these UTIP revisions. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Item 10. Let me get my glasses on. Okay. Consideration and discussion of material from Carollo regarding draft chapters 3 and 4 for the 2026 Region E water plan.
Okay, so you're going to see a pattern as we continue to move between now and March, where we submit our IPP. I will provide you draft chapters. We'll discuss high level at a planning group meeting what's in those chapters. And then the homework assignment is to download a copy of the draft chapter, read through it, and then work with me on any kind of edits or changes or additions. Up to this point, Frieza Nichols and I have taken the draft chapters about as far as we can go. And if it's still needing input from representation within the region, that's what we're hoping you guys do on our behalf. So in the same style as the draft chapter 1 and 2, we're looking now at chapter 3. Chapter 3 is divided into 5 major sections, but then they have these subsections inside those 5 major sections. I've only pulled out some very high level pieces of information that we will showcase today. And Frieza Nichols has done the same for the surface water section. And so I'll hand the presentation over to them, and they can kind of talk through those sections. But to start us off, we begin to talk about water supply availability and existing water supply. And if you joined me in the September 4th Planning 101 class, which I'll talk a little bit more about towards the end, I had used an illustration that I thought was very helpful if you're kind of visually a visual learner like me. Water supply availability was represented by a glass of water in those slides. And basically what we're saying is each source has X amount of water in it. Doesn't matter if we can tap into it or not. We're just saying, you know, certain aquifers have X amount of water in it, and that volume is dictated through the joint planning process where we get desired future conditions. In regional water planning, this available supply is estimated during drought of record conditions, which allows each entity and water user category to evaluate conditions when their supply source is at its most critical availability level. The region's total source availability in 2030 is 934,805 acre feet. This image is just a snippet of your table 3-1. Okay, so this is different than water supply capacity. So existing water supply is the availability to municipal utilities and other water user categories based on current infrastructure or maybe legal limitations and the physical availability of water from each source. So in that one-on-one class, that slide showed the cup of water now with a straw in it. And we were talking about how that straw is either your infrastructure or your legal limitations, but it is the limit to how much water you can pull out of a source. And that volume is known as your water, your existing water supply. So in 2030, regional total, we have 524,376 acre feet. Some of the new graphics that I added was just a pie chart so you can see quickly, you know, what your water availability sources are. We've always known that Region E, the majority of our water source is groundwater. 89% of our total is groundwater. Then surface water is about 7%, and then we have reuse at about 4%. In comparison, if you were to look at your existing water supply, so this is now considering, you know, the straw or the infrastructure or legal limitations, contracts, water agreements, so on and so forth. This is depicting the 2030 projected existing water supplies by county. So you've got El Paso at 60%, and then coming in as a second is Hudspeth at 25% of the total. And then you've got Culberson at 8%. We've got a tie for 3%, and then we've got a couple counties that come in less than 1%. Okay, we also have a section in Chapter 3 that is just dedicated to our major water providers and the supplies that they provide. I'm keeping those red line revisions, one, to show you what's changing in your plan, and two, to document, you know, new additions or strike-throughs or updates. At some point, we'll accept all red lines and you'll have cleaner tables and content in your Chapter 3. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Frieza Nichols, and they're going to talk about our surface water section.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Can you go back 3 slides or 4 slides to that first pie chart?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, surface water, do we have more than 60,000 acre feet per year of surface water? How is it 64,000?
For the river.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and the river water would be 60,000 acre feet from New Mexico, right?
Give me just a minute and I'll show you. And I'm sure John Albright or Crystal will help do a better job. But I actually
I'm just wondering how we get
Yeah.
to 64,000.
Yep. So if I show you the availability table that is in DB27 and the Water Development Board database that we did approve in Chapter 2, you'll see, I'm sorry, can you see my screen? I pulled up a table.
Yes.
Okay, so surface water down here, it breaks it out into one thing that did help increase our surface water. I'm glad you had this question. Is if you remember, we had a new methodology for how we were going to calculate historical use around our non-municipal sources. So livestock, irrigation, steam electric, mining, so on and so forth. And we looked at a 10-year data set and we found the average in that data set. And this helped us make sure that we were accounting for some of the recent droughts that we've seen both in 2011 and then again in 2022. And so in many places, it bumped our numbers up because they were pumping in order to provide that water for the need even during that drought. So we captured that. So I think that helped to bump up our surface water. But you'll see it's broken into your livestock, and it's broken into your run of rivers. So that's the Rio Grande coming through the WAM. And I don't know if you have additional questions. I think this is where John Albright or Crystal will have to help answer that.
Yeah, I'll be going into that. You know, the biggest chunk of that is the supply from the Rio Grande project, and I'll be talking about that.
Okay, Then I'm
We
going to get
just-
you there.
We just get 60,000 acre feet per year from that, don't we, John?
Well, I think some years it's a lot more. So, but that's
Oh,
based upon a
I
minimum.
thought it was just 60.
Well, I think it's the whole river.
Yeah. That's
Because we get 10,000 in a drought year El Paso water or 60,000 in a full supply.
Okay.
So that 60,000, I think John will explain it further. But
Okay.
I think there's some questions that he can answer.
Okay.
But that's what our window is. 10,000 is a drought, 60,000. But I think
Why is it more than 60,000?
Yeah, I'm just interested in how does it get to 64,000?
I think he's showing what's flowing through our whole region.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
from the whole region. There are, there's
Not what El Paso is using.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of water that comes in from the Rio Conchos, which is also used downstream.
Yeah, but that's below us. Okay, I got it. Okay.
And a little bit from the Pecos. So, all right.
Okay.
This is y'all have heard most of this before, but it never hurts to review. That the surface water supplies are based upon the water availability models, which were developed by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ. And there are water availability models for every basin in the state. And these water availability models, they include every water right, or every permanent water right. They reflect the priority allocation system, which is used by the state, where every water right has a priority date. And during times of shortage, the ones with the oldest priority dates get water first. Okay, so these models reflect that legal authority. They're also required by the Water Development Board for use in regional planning. So every region in the state is using some variation of the WAM, or we call them WAMs. Now, since the last plan, though, we had an update to the WAM. It only went. I'm not done yet. Go back.
Oh, I was hopefully showing updates.
Yeah. Anyway, it's but it's been the WAM has been extended to include recent drought periods, and there are also some other modifications that were made to the model as well. Now we take that WAM model, which is developed by TCEQ to do new water rights, and make a few modifications to it for regional planning purposes. We made some very minor modifications to it, and these were all approved by the region in previous meetings. We changed. Well, one of the changes was we are basing these. We have a question about how much water comes from the Rio Grande project because it is highly variable from year to year, and in this plan, as in all other regional plans, we are focusing on that drought or record conditions. So we're using the minimum annual supply from the Rio Grande project as our definition of our available supply. In previous plans, we had to use what was historically done. That has what was historically released. The model now has those years in it, so we can use what the model says. So it has a little bit different result than what we had assumed before. We also made some adjustments to how the water above irrigation water above Fort Quitman is used to better reflect how the water is actually released out of the Rio Grande project for use for irrigation. And then there was some modifications that were made at the request of the Region F Water Planning Group for the water rights in the Balmorhea area, which so that the water from the springs in the Balmorhea area are not being called on by downstream water rights. And it has a small change on supplies in Region E, which I will also get to in the next slide, I believe. Now I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so this shows table 3-4 in a red line version from what we had before, and you can see that the supplies are they're some of them are pretty close to what they were before. but none of them are really, substantially different than what we had in previous plans. But they're all based upon information that's out of the what we call TCQ WAM Run 3, their water availability model that we're required to use for regional planning. There is a note down there at the bottom, is that there was this 19 acre feet of water from that sourced in Jeff Davis County in Region E. Then that 19 acre feet has been around for many, many, many years. It just wasn't properly accounted for as a source in coming out of Jeff Davis County in Region E. And we just recently added that as a source. And so now so it's not reflected in the tables, and unless you've posted new versions of this, but we have a whole 19 acre feet from Jeff Davis County that is used in Region F for the city of Palmyra.
So it's not in the versions that got posted for y'all's review, but it is sitting in our ongoing working master copy. I've updated tables.
Okay. This kind of shows you how the supplies from the Rio Grande project work. The Rio Grande project is not explicitly modeled, but we have what was historically used out of the Rio Grande project with some adjustments to the earlier period, are what is in the model. And you can see this starts that's the annual supply on that bar graph on the bottom. Starts in 1980 on the left and goes through 2023. And you can see that the supplies have been declining over time. But there's still some years where you get, there's a whole lot of water that's available from the project. But then there's some where there's not so much. And because we are focusing on drought or record conditions, we're using 2013 as our definition of surface water supplies from the Rio Grande project. Okay. For all other water rights, we are using the minimum diversion that the water availability models show. Again, the focus is on the drought or record. And up at the top there, it shows you how the water from the Rio Grande project, that total of 44,897 acre feet, is split amongst El Paso Water, El Paso County Irrigation, and a little bit to Hudspeth County. Okay. All right, next slide. There are also a few other sections in Chapter 3 that discuss surface water issues. There's the legal and regulatory side, which does affect regional planning and is reflected in our supplies from the water availability model. Specifically, the interstate compacts for the Rio Grande and the Pecos. And as well as we also have a section on the interstate litigation. We discussed the 1906 and 1944 international treaties, which divide the Rio Grande, supplies from the Rio Grande project, and allocate some of that to Mexico. And then the other treaty allocates the Rio Grande downstream of Fort Quitman between Mexico and the U.S., including that water that comes in from the Rio Conchos. And then we also have some sections about various, I call them initiatives, but they're just various things that are going on with surface water in the far west Texas region. Discussion of the Forgotten River segments, American Heritage River. In fact, you got a scenic river. We have included in this plan the what's called the 303D list, which is a list of impaired water bodies, which is maintained by TCQ, which identifies water quality issues, and channelization, and then the Pecos Water Protection Plan. And I think that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay. Thank you, John. I did notice, Dave, in the table that is updated based on the allocation through the Rio Grande project, you can see 31,605 was bumped to 34,270. So there is some fluctuation that's probably impacting, that total that you were questioning a few minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, then we
Okay.
move into a groundwater section, very similar to surface water. We lay it out, with what are those sources. We have 10 Texas Water Development Board designated aquifers. We have 3 that have been designated by this planning group. You'll see that this top figure here is also in your chapter 1, just giving high-level summary about our groundwater section. And then we talk about methodology. Our methodology for groundwater is based on the MAG volumes, which is a product of that joint planning process where the GMA set those desired future conditions. And we covered that in chapter 2. And we had just some slight changes to our methodology, really more in the areas where there is no MAG. Like I mentioned earlier, we looked at an average between the max 8-year annual historical pumping between 2008 and 2015 that we used in the 2021 plan. And we also looked at the max 11-year annual historical pumping from 2011 to 2021, which is a more current data set, but we wanted to capture the various times that our area has experienced drought-like conditions. And so that methodology did provide some new volume and some changes to our availability in some of our counties tied to some of the aquifers. Then we kind of break it down into 4 basic components with recharge and recoverable storage and lateral movement in and out of our aquifers and these different types of withdrawals. We do a nice write-up around our GMA DFC joint planning, which does feed into regional water planning. We have a good write-up around that. And then many of you were helping me update this groundwater conditions in municipal well fields because we have a write-up in most of our areas where we have municipal well fields, and I needed help to update that information, making sure that we're accurately reflecting, the conditions there. So I've gotten some great feedback. I think I've actually completed that section. Everybody has provided input. Then we move into this table 3-8. Again, we list out, the desired future conditions that were established by our groundwater conservation districts. We have 7 counties within that municipal well field discussion that have about 14 entities that we do this write-up for. I just did Studi Butte as an example, and you can see based on some feedback that I've gotten, we've actually modified some of the text here in this last sentence to reflect how many radio read meters and check valves and so on and so forth. So very pleased with the group's participation in making sure that our chapters are being enhanced, to reflect local conditions. To John's point, we do have a section about groundwater exports. Table 3-9 provides the details around the groundwater that's being exported out of our region. It only occurs in Jeff Davis County, and it goes over to Region F. Worked closely with the Region F technical consultants to make sure that the water volume of that 19 acre feet is being represented inside Region E, goes to Region F for the city of Balmaray, who then sells it to a county other little entity. And so we have that now in our plan reflected the right way. We have a section around local supply. Local supply refers to the limited water supplies that occur usually within these stock tanks that catch precipitation runoff, and they're used primarily for livestock watering, but at times it can be made available for other local needs such as mining and irrigation. And so I've added some content here in our local supply that reflects this Water Development Board approved category called livestock local surface water supply, which you saw in John's surface water section, which kind of contributed to some extra volume of water in our surface water supply. And again, this was looking at that historical water use estimate during 2 big blocks of time and coming up with an average and saying, okay, we at least know that in these times of drought throughout these years. They were pumping X amount, and I wanted to be able to accurately reflect that in our plan. So I worked with the Water Development Board to get this livestock local supply line item or category approved. So I added some content into our local supply discussion to reflect those changes. Then we have a reuse section that defines reuse two different ways. Broadly, this direct reuse or wastewater that is reused without first being discharged into a stream or water course. And then our indirect reuse, which is wastewater that's discharged to a stream or other water course prior to being diverted back up for use. And we kind of highlight, who's involved in reuse and which type of reuse. So that pretty much summarizes chapter 3. And I think if my memory serves me well, Scott, it's an agenda item for both 3 and 4. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, chapter 4 is real easy and simple. It's full of a lot of tables that are generated by the Water Development Board, and this is just a chapter in our plan that kind of houses these 7 tables. I will say tables 4-5, 4-6, and 4-7 are not yet available. This analysis has not been completed by the board because we have to finalize our conservation water management strategies. We have to do that first before we know what needs still exist after these conservation strategies are applied. So that those 3 tables will come at a later time. Tables 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, and 4-4 are definitely complete, and they're sitting in your chapter 4. So I encourage you guys to download it. And the content, the actual text, is very small, and then there's these tables ready for your review. But basically, Chapter 4 provides projections of water supply surpluses or deficits for all water user groups by decade, based on a comparison of projected water demands, which we did in Chapter 2, by decade for each water use entity, with water supplies, which we covered in Chapter 3, leads us to the tables in Chapter 4, which entities are going to experience a shortage, which entities are going to experience a surplus. A water supply deficit may develop for individual water use estimates for numerous reasons, including a supply availability limit, infrastructure limitations, or legal limits. And then the secondary water needs analysis will come later. And that is the only slide I have on Chapter 4.
Okay. We're on item 11. Report from Carollo on other regional planning efforts.
Okay, so I'll get to a slide here in a minute that kind of shows you the cadence for meetings and what material will be covered in each meeting. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and in order for us to stay on time to meet that IPP deadline of March 3rd, we are doing all sorts of work behind the scenes between Frieza Nichols team and the Carollo team. One thing to note is the Water Development Board provided some Excel sheet and a template to be used that can help demonstrate how the planning group conducted regional or rural outreach. And so we're looking at that requirement and pulling together some material because we've definitely done 4 surveys up to this point. Most of our region is rural, so we've made sure to tick that box, but I need to be able to pull it together concisely to show the board here is how we've conducted rural outreach, and they just want to make sure that we haven't left anybody out. We've also began work on our Chapter 5. We're 7 weeks into a survey. You're going to start to get a reminder email, if not a phone call, for those entities who've received the first email but haven't responded back. This piece of the work is so critical to our regional water plan. It is the heartbeat of the plan. It's capturing the details around these water management strategies that are not just needed for the areas that are going to have a need, but that are desired by each entity. We can have strategies in the plan to meet needs, and we can have strategies in the plan just because that sponsor or entity knows that in another 5-10 years, this is something that they're going to want to do. And so we reflected in our regional water plan so that those individuals are eligible for state funding. If you've gotten a survey from me and you've not responded, there's so much around this piece of work that I can't do without your help. I don't know, and I'm not a mind reader, on what strategies you guys are thinking about, which ones you've decided you're not going to chase anymore, which ones you've actually moved beyond a feasible phase, but you're now into a construction phase. Those are details that I'm requiring the support on. In addition, before our next meeting, I will update Chapter 7, which is our drought chapter, to reflect, I think we left off in 2018, and you all know that we've experienced a 2022 drought that competed with our 2011 drought, depending on where you were at in the state. So there's a lot of graphics and tables and figures in Chapter 7 that need to be updated. And in addition, I'll bring a draft Chapter 9 and a draft Chapter 10. So we've got a lot of work in front of us, and this hopefully kind of maps it out. In today's executive committee meeting, we talked about this cadence and what, roughly when in the month we should be meeting. And so we have determined this circle here was really just saying either in November or in December, we need one planning group meeting. It does not have to be in both months. I wasn't sure if it would be harder to work around Thanksgiving or harder to work around Christmas. I speculate with the more people involved, this whole thing just gets tricky and we all have to kind of make sacrifices. It was proposed that we meet in November so that we can take December off, but in a worst case scenario, we at least have December to fall back on if we need to meet. But you can see we've got a lot of material coming before you for review and approval pretty much every month until we get to the end of February, where I have to turn around and deliver our completed draft plan to the board by March 3rd. Is there any extra conversation, Scott, that you can think of that you wanted to say to the group about our cadence?
No, but we did talk about the dates for the next meetings. We did propose October 15th. Oh, I guess that's the next item.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, okay. So we're on to item 12. Consider and discuss a date for the next regular meeting. October 15th is the date that we would like to meet, and November 7th is the date we'd like to meet. And we'd like to meet down in the areas of Alpine, and we'd like to kind of discuss where we'd meet. And we also thought that it would be best to have an in-person meeting down in the, I'm calling it the Alpine area. It wouldn't be virtual, it'd be a meeting down there. And we thought it's good for the whole group of us to meet together in a different part other than El Paso. And so that's what we'd like to do. So I'd like to pick either the 15th or November 7th to meet down in the, I'm saying the Alpine area. It doesn't have to be, it could be Marfa or Van Horn, but someplace other than El Paso. And it'd be a not virtual. What's the opposite of not virtual? In person. Yeah. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, so just for the group participating virtually, we do want to, if we're going to have it in the region, it'd be ideal to have it in person so that way we don't have any issues with technology. But if it's something that you all can only do where it's a hybrid option, then we make that work, because obviously we need to ensure that we have a quorum. We give opportunity and we give people an opportunity for input. So Teresa was mindful enough to say, well, let's give this back to the group to hear their considerations in terms of if we have, once we have a meeting in the region, do we want to make it in person exclusively or go the hybrid option? So if anybody would want to, you can comment right now, or you can put it in the chat saying what your preference is. But we obviously need an attendance level to where we're meeting quorum, and it'd be ideal if we could have everybody there, because obviously you all are well aware of what's going on in your region, and we need to hear from you. I think I saw Becky take her mic off. Becky, did you want to say something?
Yes, I am completely unavailable on the 15th of October. I can meet in person on the 7th of November or virtually, depending on how you guys have it.
Okay.
This is
and-
Albert. I'm also unavailable on October the 15th, but
So
the
let's do it
7th,
in
is- the
person
7th
on
is
the-
okay.
So it sounds like the in-person
Alpine,
would be
November
7
7th.
November.
So does that mean that we don't have a meeting in October and we push it to November?
No, we have a meeting here in October.
Well, they're not available
They're not
either way.
available either way.
I understand, but
So that's two less.
we
then.
still need to have the meeting in
Okay,
October.
so then if we have a, if we have the regional meeting for November 7th will be in the Tri-County area or in Van Horn. And the October 15th meeting will still be in El Paso in this same setup. We can do that. I don't know if anyone else wants to make a comment.
Would Becky or Albert be able to join us remotely October 15th?
I don't think so.
No.
She said no, and Albert said no, I
No.
think.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about
that-
Thursday, October 17th? Was that an option?
That's doable for me, but
Yeah, I'm available that day.
No.
Nope, the 17th. We're
October
moving.
17th?
We're
Just move it
considering
to a
October
Thursday?
7th.
I just thought you said you weren't available.
Oh, I'm
Never
not
mind.
available on
Oh, the
Friday.
week before, yeah.
Albert, how does that look for you, October
I
17th?
believe not.
Okay,
17th one.
okay,
But
well,
Becky can do it.
what we can do is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, as far as the question of virtual or in person, I'm sorry, I can't commit to in person. I just don't know my schedule well enough that far in advance to know if I could commit in person. Don't make your decision based on me, but I won't be able to commit to any in-person meetings.
Okay. Well, I think that what Peggy and I need to do is do some thorough research to ensure that we have the capabilities to show video conferencing and then make sure that the audio is sufficient. So I think we'll reach out to Sul Ross University and look at their university center. I know that when conferences have been held, they've been held in those areas, so that probably will lend itself. So we'll see if we can make that happen. But I think what we'll do then is we'll have October, the week of the 14th, the week of the 14th will be in El Paso hybrid, and then November the 7th will be in Alpine hybrid as well. But we encourage in person. How's that?
You didn't decide on October 17th or still?
Oh, I'm going to do a poll to see which, it looks, maybe the 17th is looking more ideal, but I'll just check in with everybody else.
She's looking at the week of October 14th. Okay.
Okay. And so that will take care of agenda item 12. Jennifer does have a hand up. She has
Yes.
a question.
I do. I actually wanted to make give you guys a quick update before we move into Kita's presentation. I was asked to, on September 4th, to do a new voting member kind of one-on-one water resource planning presentation. And so we conducted that, had great turnout. We had 3 of our new members join. John Kennedy, Raquel, and Roberto joined, along with Peggy and I and a few scragglers coming from different regions who were interested. And we covered kind of where did regional water planning originate and how do we plan and why is it the drought of record, and a lot of terminology that we reduced to acronyms, which I call the alphabet soup. We spelled that out. We walked slowly through the materials so that our new members I'm hoping, feel a little more prepared and feel like they're a little more caught up. It's tough to come in new to the cycle, especially when you're more than midway through your planning cycle, and just be overwhelmed with the information. And so we conducted that presentation and opened it up to questions of all kinds. And I don't know if anyone that joined that's new to the group, feels comfortable kind of giving your thoughts and feedback on your takeaways. But anyway, we did offer that to some of our new members.
This is John Kennedy. I certainly appreciated the briefing and also just the general atmosphere of everyone asking questions, even the folks that have been here a while. So I can tell that we're just trying to get to the bottom of things, and it's appreciated and look forward to.
Thank you. When was the class held?
Oh, it was last week.
Okay, very good. Good report. Any other comments? Thank you, Jennifer. John?
Mm-hmm.
So what we can do now, Chairman, is we can adjourn the meeting, and for those who want to stay on to hear the presentation from Ms. Caballero, we can, those can stay on. But we can conclude today's meeting that way. If anybody else needs to go, we can have that wrapped up.
Motion for adjournment.
I usually leave that to Albert.
Albert, are you going to make that motion?
I move we adjourn.
There you go.
I'll second that.
All right. Think we, any discussion?
There you go. All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. How's that?
Hey,
I finally did.
Jennifer, before you go, I apparently had a wrong email from you. What's your good email?
It's here.
Yes, I sent it to you. I think I caught on to that. And so I just sent you this morning an email with my Carollo email address.
Okay, JJ,
Yeah.
that's not the one I used. Hang on.
The WSP one bounced?
Yep.
I used the one
Yep.
that was on emails that we get distributed on emails, and I
For
just
the computer.
used it.
And the police are called, right? Yep, lots of the consequences of.
Okay, how about we give like a 3-minute break before we start with the
It's
presentation?
predicted.
That way, if anybody does want to come off, you can, but if you
No,
want
I
to
don't
stay out,
have
we
that.
encourage
She
you
didn't
to,
have
if
it.
you want to learn
Yeah,
more
I
about
moved
the
it. I got rid of it.
water development programs. Okay,
Very good.
Sounds
It's
good.
over
so
here.
2:39, we'll
There
start
you
at 2:43.
It's here.
Thanks.
Mute right there.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. Yes. Well, there's one in San Antonio that's smaller than ours.
Hector, you able to unmute
Well,
yourself?
Actually getting.
I get lost in them if I don't understand where they came from.
Groundwater, it's like.
You know, and
estuary water.
that's why I'm not sure about that 64,000 acre feet. I still don't necessarily understand that.
And then they put the
They're-
concentrate back into that.
We don't get,
So it's not quite.
Here in El Paso,
That's right.
And it's
we
not as
don't
hard to
get
get as
water from
groundwater.
Pecos.
Yes.
we
So
don't get water from the,
So I didn't
from the
hear you a
Nachos.
minute ago if you were
So
talking
and
about.
that should
Let me
be
have
acre
your
feet available.
water
to
Yes.
Paso.
the next,
Hopefully it'll get,
So I'm,
yes.
maybe
it will.
there's
okay.
I can
new
just send you
water.
that kind of a
I
person.
know.
water.
Heather,
like
are
to
you
say
asking me a question or
that
Kita?
un- As a result of
Keta.
rainfall.
Oh, Keta, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's getting ready to present.
Reused.
I'm here.
So
Okay,
I
I
don't
can
know.
hear you
I
now.
still don't know where that comes from.
Sorry.
Eventually I'll figure it out.
Peggy,
That'll be good to know.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
are
but,
you
but
on?
that's El Paso water. That's not downstream water. See?
Peggy, I don't see Peggy.
I'm
Oh,
still not
she
sure I got
walked
a good
away.
answer.
Okay,
It's somewhere
we're
out
just
there.
gonna rehab this very long meeting. that we're
Yeah, I'm not sure,
Well,
I'm
we
not
could
sure
have it
4
in the
acre feet's
recording,
that
yeah.
much.
Sure, but
See if I
kind
can-
of just
So I'll
understanding
make a copy and then
where
I'll
it's
slice it.
coming in and where we plan for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cynthia will provide her contact info so people can reach out.
Oh.
More questions.
I was supposed to be.
She's a pro. Okay. So what are you gonna do, Dave? You're gonna stay or you're gonna go?
No, I've got to go. I
Okay.
was supposed to be somewhere at 3.
Okay, do it. And John, if you want to move up closer, I mean, in the middle, you're more than welcome to. Or stay where you are, whatever you'd like.
Oh, yeah.
I'm catching a flight at 3, so.
Uh-oh.
And Sean, you too.
Well,
Well, the
good.
flight's at 4, but I have 2 minutes.
Oh, I was
to
going to
go.
say 3, you're not going to make it.
I'm okay.
Close to the airport.
As long as you got that expedited check-in?
No.
Oh, really?
I should though, I fly so much.
Yeah, that's not hard to get.
Yeah, I've heard it's a breeze.
I had it when I was flying for the military. you know,
Yeah.
Going to meetings and things.
Yeah, I have some friends.
And it was very nice. You just walk through.
Yeah.
See you next time.
All right, see you next time.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Getha, I think we're okay for you to start if you'd like.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to give you a brief presentation of our financial programs. My name's Enriqueta Caballero. I'm part of the outreach team at the Texas Water Development Board. The presentation today is going to be very general and very brief, being cognizant and respectful of your time. But we do welcome the opportunity to visit with you, either individually or as a group. Go back out to El Paso and do a full presentation, which usually takes anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half, because that's when we discuss all the details of the programs and we talk about how to access those programs and how to, all the details of all the programs that we administer. If you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to stay on a few minutes have share my direct information with you, and then you can follow up with me directly. I am going to turn off my camera and then I'm going to share my desktop, and I just want to make sure that you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just a little bit about the Water Development Board, which you know now. We do 3 things. We do science, planning, and finance. On the science side, we do the data collection and the dissemination of water. And then on the planning side, which is, kind of what you guys are doing right now, is the regional water supply planning. But then we collect that data and they collect that information and we prepare a state water plan. And for the first time, we've created a state flood plan, and very similar to the regional water supply groups, or rather the regional water planning groups, we also have flood planning groups. And then last but not the least, is we have a finance section of the agency. The finance section is the section that functions like a bank. This is where we finance your infrastructure projects. So under the finance, we have the Water Supply and Infrastructure Division. Again, this is where the infrastructure financing takes place. We are 2 sections of the division, and I like to explain this because I know the agency is divided into sections, and I know some folks have never dealt with the water supply and infrastructure section of the agency. So we do program administration and reporting. This is where we administer all the state and federal programs, includes me. We do outreach and marketing for the programs. And this is where you're also going to find all those coordinators that handle all those individual programs, as well as reporting to the state and reporting to the feds about how that money is being spent. And then we'll look at your regional water project development side or section. Those are the folks that do the project management. We have 7 teams throughout the state of Texas. 6 are geographically assigned, and then 1 team kind of functions like a floater. So the project management teams have a team that consists of engineers, project managers, financial folks. They have an environmental reviewer. So they take your project from A to Z. So our financial programs, we have, as I mentioned, we have federal programs and we have state programs. As I said, these are very, very simple explanations of what they are. Under our federal program side, these are what we call, or rather what is called, the state revolving funds. These are funds that we receive on a yearly basis. These are congressional appropriations that are funneled down through EPA, which they administer at the federal level, and then we get our money through EPA. Every state in the United States gets state revolving fund money, and every state is required to contribute a 20% match. So Texas gets its allocation based on a needs survey that we do. And then once we complete that survey, submit it, then they give us the allocation. What I can say is that the demand is always high, and usually the funding capacity that we receive is not compatible to what the demand is. But these are great programs. You have the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Those are all the programs, or rather all the projects that deal with water, any water-related project. We are able to fund an array of infrastructure water projects. We also have lead service line replacement funding, and excuse that typo on service line. And we have emerging contaminants. The lead service line and emerging contaminants were some additional supplemental funding that we received when that bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. And we call it the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, so that we use the acronym IIJA. And if you look at the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, those are all the projects that are going to deal with your wastewater, your stormwater, your reuse. And that part also has that emerging contaminants additional supplement. Once those additional supplement are spent, then we just go back to our regular allocation of our state revolving funds. Under these state revolving funds, we also have the opportunity for communities to tap into what is called Asset Management Program for Small Systems. There's two ways you can tap into this program. You can tap through it through a grant, which is for the very small systems and wastewater utilities. And then there is a loan component when you apply under the state revolving fund, whether it's for the clean water or the drinking water, and those come in at 0% loan. Then we have the Water Utilities Technical Assistance Program. This is a great program. It was created, it was implemented this past fall, so we're going on a year when we open this program up. And the reasoning behind that is because we realized that we have a lot of systems that need that technical assistance part to submit an application or pre-application rather, to ensure that, for example, they have their rate studies done, they have their asset management done, and so it's got a scope of work. Any system, regardless of whether you're small or you're big, any water or wastewater system can apply for this particular program, and there is no cost associated with this program. So it is it's technically just like a grant. We do take applications, and we do go through a prioritization system, but it is a great opportunity for you to tap into this assistance program that will allow you at the end of the scope of the work to have a better prepared pre-application, whether it's for you're applying for a federal program or you're applying for a state program. So now let's talk a little bit about our state programs. You will see that our state programs are, we have a lot more state programs than we have federal programs. So on the state programs, of course, if you're part of the planning group, water planning group, then you know about the State Water Implementation Fund for Texas. And these are your projects in the state water plan. These are, as you know, these are bonds for the programs that are issued to SWRF. And then the funding amount is determined at each prioritization round. And then we go on to the Economically Distressed Area Program. This is a program that provides loan and grants, and you're coming in at 50% if you're an eligible community for water and wastewater projects in what are called economically distressed areas. And those areas are defined, there's clear definitions, and there's some additional program requirements. I do want to say that all our programs have their individual requirements, and some of them also have some special requirements. And then moving on to the Texas Water Development Fund, commonly referred to as the D Fund. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over the Flood Infrastructure Fund. The Flood Infrastructure Fund is also a really popular program because it is specific to flood. We received some money 2 sessions ago, and then last session we received some additional appropriations to work on our Flood Infrastructure Fund. This program does offer loans and grants, and there are also some opportunity for 0% interest rather on those that are eligible for the loan component, and they can tap into that 0%. Texas Water Development Fund, the D Fund. This is our oldest program This was, created kind of basically when the agency came along a few years later. And the reason this is a really popular program, it's because this is non-competitive. And what we mean by non-competitive is you don't have to go through any prioritization. It's you give us a call, we set up a pre-application meeting with you. We share with you what the application is going to entail. You tell us about your project. You give us your scope, what you want to do. You give us an estimated cost, and then we put you on the list. And on that list, then we sell bonds with our AAA rating, and then we take it to the board, and then we finance your project. And the other great thing about this particular program is it is not specific to one infrastructure need. You can fund water, wastewater together, or you can fund a wastewater and a flood control together, or if you just want to do one. It's totally up to the applicant. It's totally up to you on what type of project or projects that you want to do. Again, this is the non-competitive. It's just picking up the phone, reaching out to us and say, hey, Keta, we're interested in the D fund because we want to get this done as quickly as possible. And then we get you over to the team manager, we schedule that meeting, and then you fill out that application. Moving on to our next program. This is the Agriculture Water Conservation Loan and Grant Program. It provides, the funding for those ag water conservation projects in Texas. We do have a coordinator that works directly with our ag folks. He's a wealth of information. If you're interested in that particular program, also let me know and I'll contact you to that direct coordinator. He's in a different division from ours, but we work very closely together when it comes to that ag program. The state participation, this is a program that allows us to invest in that right sizing of a project. And those are projects that are for future needs. And then, of course, that encourages the opportunity for you to develop an optimal regional project. And then by funding the excess capacity for future use. The Rural Water Assistance Fund, this is a loan grant program, and this is for small and rural water utilities, and that is for your water and wastewater projects. And again, we sell bonds for that amount that is needed. The Texas Water Fund, this is the $1 billion that was approved by the Texas voters and originally was filed as a bill last session, which is Senate Bill 28. Our voters were very, very generous and was voted for in a high percentage. And so basically, the Texas Water Fund itself is not a new fund. It gave us the $1 billion that went from general revenue to the Texas Water Fund, which is what the agency administers. It did create one new program. It's called the New Water Supply Fund for Texas. We're in the process of developing those rules and regulations, going before our board, getting them adopted, and then probably by winter, if I'm not mistaken, that is what we have on our website. We would be looking at then requesting project solicitation for all those applicants that are interested in seeking funding from that new water supply fund. We also, from this pot of money, some of that funds were transferred into some existing programs. And also we are undertaking a statewide water outreach. The Texas Waterfront has very specific statutory requirements. And so only those requirements that fall under the Texas Water Fund would be eligible to tap into these funds. So funding assistance. So how do you know when the funding is available? So usually the majority of our programs do funding cycles. That means that we open yearly and we usually follow state fiscal years. We usually open in the fall and we close in the spring. And so how do you tap into these programs? Well, on our federal programs, you submit what is called a project information form. What project information form is just like a pre-application. You tell us about who you are, your service area, the number of customers that you have. You tell us about your actual system, about, everything about the scope of work, your project description. You tell us about the project costs. And then, of course, we look at those project costs. And if you are going to go over a certain amount of estimated costs, then we would invite you to get your engineer to sign and date that estimated cost. Again, this is just a pre-application. It's not a full application. And that is for your state revolving fund, for your federal programs. For your state programs, and some of you may be familiar with this because you have projects in the state water plan, you submit an abridged application, and that is again for the majority of our state programs. So what can we fund? Well, we fund planning, acquisition, design, and construction, and the applicant drives this. The applicant is the one that says, you know what, get that, we just want to do planning right now, or we want to do planning and design, and then we come back for construction. Or if you have some acquisition, if you want to do planning, design, planning, acquisition, design, and then come back to construction. And then we have some applicants that say, you know what, I want to apply for everything just together right now. I want to do the whole planning, acquisition, design, and construction. That is totally up to you, and that is your decision. Eligible applicants, if you're a political subdivision, if you are a water supply corporation, if you are a public water system and municipality, if you are a private water system, we also finance, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, is we are able to finance an array of projects. Yesterday I was at a water reuse conference, and we talk about water reuse under the drinking water, under the clean water, and under a couple of our state programs. So that is doable. You know, anything having to do with water, with wastewater, with your storm water, recycling, with your flood, with conservation. I always invite folks to read the details of what we're able to fund, and also to reach out to us and say, hey, I can't find my project on your examples. Can I fund this project with you guys? And so we'll be glad to also sit down with you and discuss your individual project and the type of project that you're trying to accomplish, or the type of financing that you're looking from us to fund your project. Our programs are basically loan-based, and on the federal side, they do have really good interest rates. And the reason for that is because this is federal money, and we are able to subsidize that money. In addition to the subsidy money, we also have what are called principal forgiveness categories. Under the principal forgiveness categories, that is where you're looking at potentially receiving some additional forgiveness, as well as some monetary allocations. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. We have a category called disadvantaged communities. And under that disadvantaged communities, we look at the income, the unemployment, and the population of the service area. And then we also look at the household cost factor, taking into account that information as well. And then we do a methodology, and then we capture what the percentage of that forgiveness is going to have on your project. We currently have 70% forgiveness on projects for SRF. And that means that you could potentially receive 70% grant with your project if you're a disadvantaged community. Now, let me give you another example. If you have an urgent need means that you may be running out of water within the next 180 days, or your community, you've run out of water, or you have a serious MCL violation, whether you're being enforced by TCEQ or EPA, or we have a declaration from our governor or from our president, then you could potentially be eligible for that urgent need category. Under the urgent need category, we're now looking at the monetary allocation. We're now looking at those communities that are disadvantaged, potentially be eligible to receive up to $800,000, and those non-disadvantaged communities potentially receive up to $500,000. These are just examples of two categories. There are some additional categories that we cover under principal forgiveness. They're really good categories. We have, we define them very clearly, and you're able to look up what those categories up, and then you're able to look at whether or not you may want to seek those categories and potentially get some forgiveness for your project. I do want to say that under our federal programs, currently for our drinking water programs, or rather drinking water program, we do have a maximum loan component, which is that 49 million. So that's the maximum amount of money that we can finance you. And then on the clean water side, we would be looking at a $16 million threshold. And then that percentage of forgiveness it is capped at $10 million. And the reason for that is because of the funding capacity limitations and as well as on the forgiveness side, we want to be able to, kind of expand that principal forgiveness and spread it out a little bit. So I just wanted to share with you, and that is on our federal programs. On our state programs, we do have, as I mentioned when I was reviewing our state programs, we do have some of those that have grant components to them. We're looking at the Flood Infrastructure Fund, you're looking at the Economically Distressed Area Program, and those grants can be pretty substantial under those programs. For example, under the Economically Distressed Area Program, you could potentially do that 70%. Again, if you're considered a disadvantaged community, there is a potential there. Then we look at, I did, going over the categories. I just mentioned the principal forgiveness grants under the federal program. I mentioned that right now. Any questions on this? I do like to share our financial page because when you click on the financial page and you look to the right-hand side, and I know this is a little bit small and I apologize, you have the list of all the programs that we fund. You click on whatever program you're interested in, then it will open that page specifically on that program, and it will give you all the details about the program. That is the email, or rather the link to the web page. Again, we are available for calls, for virtual meetings, for in-person meetings. There are two of us that are part of the outreach team, and that is myself, and that is Scott Galloway. He is our team lead. He is out of the Dallas area. I work out of the Rio Grande Valley, but we do travel the whole state of Texas, and we always welcome the opportunity to provide assistance. There is a general questions information email box. I respond to those. You will get a response if you're just looking to just say, I don't remember, get this email address or telephone number, but I remember that general questions email box, and I'm going to email there. You will get a response there, and it could be as simple as, when do project solicitations come out for the state revolving funds, or when can I submit for the Flood Infrastructure Fund? Things like that. It can be as simple as that. And with that, I want to take the opportunity to once again thank you for allowing me to present. Again, this was very general information. Just wanted to kind of touch base on what we have oversight over. And, always think about us when you're looking to finance some of your infrastructure projects. And I welcome any questions if anybody has any.
Great. Will we be able to get a copy of these slides?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes. Well, I'll be more than happy to send over a copy of this slide. And in addition, if you're interested, I do have a longer presentation. We are planning to go out to the El Paso area to do a workshop, the regional financial programs workshop. If I'm not mistaken, that's going to be in the fall. And that is where we do the complete presentation, where we go over the programs and provide a lot more information. But yes, we'll be more than glad to share this presentation with you.
Thank you.
Kenta, I do have a question with the funding that you have available. Those monies that have come in through the ARPA, through the bipartisan, what would you suggest is the best pool of funding for applicants to apply for in terms of those that are not oversubscribed? Or are you still in a situation where you have more applications than you do have funding in everything, in every funding source?
I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday saying we have so many great projects, and it is funding capacity issues, because we realize that the demand for all the programs, whether they're federal or state, is very, very high. So what I always tell folks is, let's sit down and look at your project. Then we share with you the requirements, and we share with you, the information the rating criterias. And then we also have, for example, I work really closely with a nonprofit organization that does a lot of work in rural communities, the smaller rural that really need a lot of that technical assistance. Refer them to them, and they kind of prepare them to submit a more complete project information form. How do you tap into those, you know, those ranking points? So the funding capacity issue, you know, we have no control over, but we do welcome the opportunity again to kind of give you that information, to share with you, this is what the ranking is going to be. These are the points that are associated per every category. And these are the things that you may want to look at in terms of, you know, when you submit that project information form. We also shared useful tips. For example, you know, are your rates up to date? Are you doing audits? You know, things that are very simple that could basically, you know, not get you very far if you're looking at not having certain things done or certain things completed. I always encourage folks to submit pre-applications, whether it's for a state program or a federal program. I also encourage them to submit to both. I have one water supply corporation that is working with other systems around them, and they're getting ready to do a regional project. And I said, you know, you could submit for SWIFT, you could submit for SRF, and you could submit for the DFUD. And you know, broaden your opportunities of where you can get the money. But realistically, I mean, they are prioritization projects, they are competitive, but our goal as part of the outreach team is to provide you that information and so you are prepared. I use the saying of getting all your ducks in a row, so you're more able to submit a project information form. They may get you some additional points, and for some of those projects that we invite to come in, you know, a difference could be 1 point of getting that invitation to submit that full application.
And in terms of the rate studies, like you mentioned, is there a funding source within the Water Development Board that allows for funding for water districts to apply to be able to implement a rate study?
So under the water utility technical assistance, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to double check really quick. That is something that they look at and something they complete as part of the scope of work. And that particular technical assistance, as I mentioned, it's not limited to your size. Any water, wastewater utility can apply with the intent of them coming in to apply for our funding for our financial programs. So that is a great opportunity to tap into that funding. I think the max allocation is 150,000. There's no match. In fact, unlike AMPS, for the AMPS grant portion, we do require 80 hours of staff time. The WUTAB doesn't require any staff time. We do encourage it because our contractor goes out to your system, to your business and say, hey, we need to look at this and we need to look at this. And so they do have a specific scope of work that they have to accomplish. I know that the nonprofit that I refer folks to, they do rate studies. They do a lot of technical assistance, financial, technical, managerial, a lot of that stuff. And if you fall into that rule definition for them, you're able to, you know, I do the referral. They're pretty good about accepting those as well, which also includes that rate study information.
You're talking about the Texas Water Finance Exchange?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they all the referrals I've done to them, they've been really good about it. You know, you also have, you know, the TCQs does that FMT. They also work with folks that may need some of that FMT of system, which also works well for us because those folks that have that FMT assistance, they get referrals to us, and then we reach out to them to kind of look at our programs to do some of that infrastructure financing, or rather for us to finance that infrastructure. And some of those even have to do with their compliance issues. So that we do work very closely with TCQ. We do get the referral candidates. We do reach out to those candidates, and we do follow up meetings with them. And then we talk about our funding to meet their compliance issues.
Thank you. And I've taken up a lot of time. Anybody in the virtual world, does anyone have a question for Ketha?
Not a question, but just thank you for your time. Every time
You're
I
very
sit
welcome.
through a funding presentation, I'm always amazed how much I continue to learn. I don't know if that's because it changes at the board or if it's just because every time I'm a little more sensitive to something. But yes, great presentation.
Well, I like to share that we learn a lot on a continuous basis, even the staff, myself, because, you know, we do admit, you know, we're administering, you know, new programs, new funding cycle. We, you know, the board may want us to make some changes to some programs and so forth. Just to give you an example, on our state revolving funds, we now have a category for first-time service connections. And so that's a new category that just came in, and that the probability, I spoke to the director, or rather the manager, and I said, are we keeping this for the next round of the SRFs? And he said, yes. So things like that come up that are changes. Yeah. And I know that our programs, it's a lot of information. And that's why I, you know, cannot even stress enough about giving us the opportunity to sit down with you, because it could be daunting if you've never come to us for financing. It can be pretty daunting to look at all the details and all the program requirements and everything that is due to us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And I know that I've got somebody for sure, one of our districts that we're helping would definitely want to, we'll connect them with you because there's several of the funding sources I think they can apply for.
Have a wonderful afternoon and a great evening.
All right. Thank you,
You too.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, John Kennedy, before you